As-salamu alaikum fam, Insha'Allah you're all doing well. I am sitting here in a cafe in Napoli, alhamdulillah, Jazak'Allah for being here. Today I want to discuss a few things with you. So what is the irrational fear and hatred of Muslims? It's Islamophobia. Where does Islamophobia come from? One of the theories is that Islamophobia comes from Orientalism. What is Orientalism? Edward Said wrote a book in 1978 called Orientalism. Although Orientalism can be traced back to the 1400s, and if you know anything about colonialism and Eurocentrism, it's pretty easy to trace these roots back to Islamic Spain and the European conquest of Andalusia. One of the things about Orientalism I find so interesting is that it uses a lot of binary oppositions. So, what is a binary opposition? One of the things that Orientalists like to use is they like to pit the West against the East, and they think of the East, which includes Asia, the Middle East, of course, and North Africa, as backwards, stagnant. They think of it as a monolith. They think of it as stuck in customs and traditions that are harmful and not helpful. They think of this area of the world, which is a huge, vast, dynamic part of the world, obviously, but they think of it as a monolith that is unchanging, and it has been like that forever. And the problem with that is, A, it's not true, obviously, but also they use this sort of justification. They look at this part of the world in a way that makes it observable, researchable, and it's almost like a caricature of another world. And we know that that's not true. If you've traveled anywhere outside of North America, you know that that's not true. So, the East, in Orientalist eyes, is unchanging, stagnant, it's a monolith, and it's alluring, it's exotic, and it's backwards. Whereas the West is seen as forward-thinking, liberal, free, dynamic. They think of the West as dynamic and enlightened. And we know that these things are not true. These are binary oppositions used to justify occupation, used to justify wars, and used to justify this belief that the West is better than the East, and that's simply not true. Another oppositional binary that Orientalists love to use is they like to think of the Middle East, people in the Middle East, specifically Muslims, as illogical, emotional, passionate, and those emotions are more important to them than rationality and logic. Because the West likes to see itself as logical and stoic and in control, when they show Muslims on TV or in movies and in books, they're always passionate and illogical and furious, or unable to be controlled. And that's a classic Orientalist trope, because that's not true, obviously. And so this is an enlightenment. These people, you like to use this in the West as like, we're more enlightened in the West because we use rationality, we use logic. Mind is used in a way that's not like base emotions. So it's an opposite of the emotional. It's the rational, it's the logic. We're unfeeling, we're cold. Whereas in the Middle East, they're warm and frustrated and passionate and angry. I mean, we see these tropes all the time. So that's another example of oppositional binaries that the Orientalists love to use. One of the ways that Orientalism is used is for policies. US loves to use these policies, obviously. So it justifies occupation, it justifies invasion, and it justifies this notions of Western superiority, which is obviously untrue, and it's harmful, and millions of people have died because of this. I think we're seeing that play out in real time today, unfortunately. Another harmful Orientalist trope is the belief that the East is sort of like this make-believe land. I know Aladdin in Disney is often used to portray the way that Arabs are. And this is obviously not true. If you've been to anywhere in Africa or Asia or the Middle East, this is not true. These people are dynamic, traditions are changing over time and place. It's almost as if they exotify, or there's an exotification of the East, which is one of the ways, if you learn about so there's an exotification of the East also, which is a classic Orientalist trope. It's another reason why people in the West have such a hard time with women who cover up. This is a huge, huge issue. If you look at the colonial expansion of the French in Algeria and North Africa, they really wanted to remove the veils of the Algerian women, the Tunisian women, the Moroccan women. Orientalists want to see the shape and form and beauty of Eastern women. It's not only harmful, and we can see that play out today in France right now, right? So wearing religious symbols is literally illegal in France. So we can see how these Orientalist policies from the 1400s are actually playing out in France and other places in the world, like the war in the Middle East right now. These are playing out in real world time. These are harmful tropes. However, they're justified every day in places like England, France, and the United States, and Canada, actually. So yeah, that's another harmful trope that the Orientalists use. It's a lens that they use, it's a framework they use to justify invasion, occupation, and oppression of those who are not like them, or they perceive are not like them. I find it interesting when people comment both on Twitter and on my YouTube page here that I'm somehow a race traitor because I'm Muslim, even it's because I'm white, right? So people assume that you cannot be white if you're Muslim, or you cannot be Muslim if you're white, which literally makes no sense, because the same people would not think the same thing if they saw a black Christian or an Asian Christian, but somehow a Korean Muslim or a white Muslim is somehow, it is like, they cannot fathom that in their framework. It's bizarre to them, even though just yesterday I had a person in my comments saying, "You're not Arab." I'm like, yeah, so what does that have to do with anything? Islam is a religion of almost 2 billion people. It has nothing to do with race. Yeah, alhamdulillah for that. But it's funny how people assume that about Islam, but they don't assume that about Christianity. So that's a clear example of this Orientalist framework and mindset. Until we start critiquing these narratives, this won't change. And one of my goals on this channel is actually to start critiquing this more and more and more. So inshallah I can do that, and inshallah people find it helpful and useful. And I think we all have Orientalist or Islamophobic people in our families, unfortunately. But alhamdulillah, that's a test for us. And inshallah we can sort of shed light just with little simple gentle reminders that this irrational fear and hatred is a project. It's a colonial project. They're trying to colonize our minds with this sort of mentality. And I understand it's because it's inculcated. We've been brainwashed for centuries. I mean, it's almost 1,000 centuries of this has been going on. So I understand that it's hard to get across, but if I can understand it, certainly everybody else can. So just finished my coffee and wanted to wrap up my lecture here. And there may or may not be a test on Monday. Inshallah, you've been taking notes. We can see some of the ways that this Orientalist mindset plays into Islamophobia today. So there's this assumption in the West that Muslims are irrational and driven by emotion and passionate, whereas the West is liberal and enlightened and driven by logic. So say if a Muslim family moves into your neighborhood, there's a presumption that this Muslim family that has just moved in is driven by emotion, and they're illogical, and somehow their belief system is stuck in the past, which is in opposition to the enlightenment, the liberal, the forward-thinking rational Western brain. So we presume that we know a lot about Muslims without actually knowing about Muslims. And this is also obviously problematic. A lot of people think that, oh, why would I even get to know my neighbor? I already know about them. I'm presuming things about them because of what media and this Orientalism, this Orientalist logic has told me what these people are. They are the other. They are different. They are passionate. They are not rational. They are illogical. And we in the West are logical, rational, enlightened, and liberal. And that's just not true. So, inshallah, this is helpful. And inshallah, you're having a beautiful day. And inshallah, I will see you in the next video. Jazak'Allah for your support and your encouragement. I love you guys. And please keep our ummah in your du'as. And inshallah, you know that I'm also praying for you guys. All right, see you in the next video, guys. Ciao.